For centuries, people have jumped off objects with primitive parachutes. During the Age of Discovery in 15th century Italy, Leonardo da Vinci sketched a pyramid-shaped device to save those who, during fires, were trapped in the upper reaches of stone towers, hundreds of feet above medieval settlements. Meant to be constructed of linen and wood, the parachute was among dozens of concepts that never made it further than the prolific polymath genius's drafting table. The French would eventually give the parachute its name, which means to prevent falling. But early constructions were crude, without manuals, tutorials, or design specs, and testing was dicey. In 1783, a physicist successfully plunged from the top of an observatory in Montpellier, France, with a design similar to Leonardo's concept, but attempts just as often went wrong. In 1837, a watercolor artist tested a 200-pound creation, built in the shape of an inverted cone, from a balloon over an expectant crowd in South London. When the chute broke apart in the sky, the parachutist plunged to his death in a field. By the 20th century, structural steel construction had made the first skyscrapers possible, and a dozen vertiginous buildings had altered Manhattan's profile. It was the job of Frederick R. Law, a steeplejack, to maintain the city's rising monuments to commerce, painting flagpoles on the likes of the Singer and Pulitzer buildings. During a period when work was slack, Law acquired the necessary permits and a camera crew, and on a February day in 1912, parachuted from the torch atop the Statue of Liberty, more than 300 feet above New York Harbor. His parachute was primitive by modern standards and lacked any steering mechanism, so Law swam desperately through the air to avoid a dip in the frigid harbor. Limping away following a hard landing on coping along the island's perimeter, he declined a request for an interview by the New York Times. But 4 days later, Law stepped from a taxi on the Brooklyn Bridge and parachuted 133 feet into an East River choked with ice, as movie cameras captured the scene. A waiting tug rescued him. 2 months would pass before his next act, a leap from the 31st floor of the Bankers Trust Building at the intersection of Broad and Wall Streets. With stockbrokers and newsboys gaping, Law settled on the roof of the Sub-Treasury Building. According to the Times, he called over the edge to a stunned crowd on Nassau Street that he was unhurt and feeling fine. For the next 50 years, an occasional daring soul would make a fixed object jump, a building here, a cliff or tower there, and the occasional bridge, but the resulting headlines and notoriety resulting from these stunts was fleeting. A new era had opened following the breakthrough in powered aircraft flight by Wilbur and Orville Wright in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, on December 17, 1903. 2 world wars would transform aviation and beget recreational skydiving. By the 1960s, a growing population of experienced and skilled parachutists would include some with a thirst for stronger thrills than exiting airplanes. Appraising the proportions of large fixed objects, they allowed their imagination to roam unchecked. That is more or less what led 2 men to pose for a snapshot at a trailhead beneath towering ponderosa pines on a sunny July day in 1966. That day, an accountant named Mike Pelkey and a truck driver named Brian Schubert, both from Barstow, California, would launch from El Capitan, a hunk of cracked gray granite like an elephant's hide, rising 3,000 sheer feet above California's Yosemite Valley. They wore bulky military-issue parachutes, and on the way down both men were battered mercilessly against the cliff by winds, ending up with multiple fractures. When their ordeal made national news, Schubert told a reporter for the Los Angeles Times, "I would suggest no one else do it." It says something about a strain of skydivers that this warning served as a challenge instead. By 1971, a stuntman named Rick Sylvester would ski off the top of El Cap with a parachute, a move he repeated 5 years later on Canada's Baffin Island as a double for Roger Moore in the opening sequence of the James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. Then in July 1975, a skydiver from Queens named Owen Quinn sneaked to the top of the North Tower of the World Trade Center while posing as an antenna repairman and plunged 1,300